This is a Pokemon card from 1999. Back when it was simple. Actually, they're still simple today if you know the basics. Starting at the top, we have the Pokemon's name. This will be followed by HP, which stands for health points. Next to this, you'll see a symbol representing the Pokemon's type. If the Pokemon is basic, the top left corner will be blank. But if it has evolved, it will have a small picture of a Pokemon it evolved from. Now when a Pokemon evolves, it will be called a Stage 1. And if it evolves again, it will be a Stage 2. Think 0, 1, 2, not 1, 2, 3. This square here is called the illustration window or art box. This is where you'll find the visual representation of the Pokemon. Sometimes the background will be shiny and reflective with an appealing pattern. This is a holofoil card. It's a very thin layer of aluminum in the card itself. Sometimes you'll find a stamp or symbol in or outside the illustration window. These can mean different things. This one is a first edition stamp, meaning the card belongs to the very first print and is limited in quantity. Its only purpose is to entice collectors who see the appeal of having the first cards. This is a set symbol. This is used to quickly identify which set a card is from. They've changed these a lot over the years, so we'll dive deeper later. This is a pre-release stamp. This card was given out as a participation prize in an in-person event. The bottom section will have attacks and abilities to use during the trading card game. If the Pokemon has a special ability, it will be near the top, just under the illustration window. After this, you will find attacks. To the left is how much energy it's going to cost to perform that attack, and to the right is the amount of damage that attack will inflict on your opponent's Pokemon. Underneath the attacks, you'll find resistance and weaknesses. This is kind of like rock, paper, scissors. And finally, the retreat cost. This is how much energy it will cost you to retreat your Pokemon from the active position. Now, at the very bottom, we have specific information to index the card. You'll find the illustrator credit, copyright information, and the card's specific number, as well as the total number of cards in the expansion set. And in the very bottom right-hand corner of the card, you'll find a rarity symbol. But modern Pokemon cards look a little bit different, so we're going to explore each of these 5 categories in more detail. A Pokemon's name isn't as simple as you'd think. Check this out. This says that Clefable evolves from Clefairy, okay? The official game rules state that this name has to match exactly. In other words, Clefable cannot evolve from, say, Lily's Clefairy EX. Now, this isn't something you really have to worry about because this Clefable and Lily's Clefairy EX were made 25 years apart and won't be used in the same deck, but it's still good to know if you want to understand the game. By the way, Lily's Clefairy is an owner's Pokemon, sometimes called trainer's Pokemon. It resembles a Pokemon-human relationship. Sometimes you'll see something like a Galarian Pokemon or a Hisuian Pokemon. Well, some Pokemon look different based on which region they're from. So a Wooper looks a little bit different than a Paldean Wooper, which some people just shorten to Pooper. Other Pokemon have different forms that aren't related to their region, like Teal Mask Ogerpon or Rapid Strike Urshifu. Promotional cards can get pretty creative with names. We've seen some cards like Pikachu with Grey Felt Hat or Special Delivery Bidoof. These are promos for a reason, since you wouldn't be able to evolve these Pokemon without, for example, a Raichu that specifically says that it evolves from a Special Delivery Pikachu. Sometimes you'll see something after the Pokemon's name, like EX, GX, VMAX, or even something like Mega Lucario EX. These carry different game mechanics, but they're easy to remember because they have their own rule boxes that tell you what they do. They don't all exist at once. Only one group of them is legal at a time. You would never build a deck with EXs and GXs and V-Stars all at once unless you're crazy. If you go back to the early 2000s, you'll see Delta species Pokemon. These are Pokemon that have some kind of energy type modification. Some are switched, so we have a dark type Charizard, a fire type Gyarados. By the way, there are 11 different types. Back in the day, we started with just grass, fire, water, lightning, psychic, fighting, and normal, but now we have added dark, metal, dragon, and fairy. But fairy was later cut. All Pokemon have an energy type in the top right of the card. It will be one of these 11, but there are a few exceptions. Some cards from EX Team Rocket Returns have their type combined with Dark type. These were the first dual type Pokemon cards, and they get a special symbol to represent the duality of their energy. We also had the dual type energy Pokemon for a while, which are great to look at and fun to collect. Something else I wanted to briefly touch on are these little ancient and future icons you'll see on some cards. This is an added layer to strategizing in the card game. It's like a subcategory of Pokemon, and their cards will work together. For example, you might want to build a deck focused around ancient Pokemon that will utilize ancient trainer cards. They all work together. There are other versions of this, like Single Rapid and Fusion Strike, or Ultra Beast, or Team Plasma. Even though the top of the card looks relatively simple, there can be a lot of information hidden in the details. Pokemon card designs have come a long way after almost 30 years. What was once contained to a small window now spans the entire card, but there were lots of interesting stops along the way. This design we covered earlier slowly changed over time. The first edition stamps were scrapped in 2002, and the set symbols were moved to the lower right-hand corner of the card, near the rarity symbol. Starting with the Ruby and Sapphire set, the illustrator credit was moved up to sit just below the artwork. Evolution boxes were moved down here too, but only temporarily. Something that never changed though was the phenomenal artwork. I think we can all agree that the Pokemon's illustrations are what make Pokemon cards special, but the holo pattern is what highlights that artwork. The very first cards released in Japan have what we call the Cosmos holo pattern. It features small pixelated orbs and, if you're lucky, a nice little swirl. But international cards launched with the Starlight pattern, which features star shapes that move side to side and provide a sense of depth behind the Pokemon. Cosmos was the more popular pattern and overtook most vintage cards, but many other patterns are still used. And some are reserved for specific uses. For example, the Cracked Ice holo pattern is mostly found on theme deck cards, and the Confetti holo pattern has always been used for the McDonald's promotional sets. We still use the Cosmos pattern today, but it's reserved for special promos. The Legendary Collection, released back in 2002, introduced reverse holo cards. This is when the foil pattern is visible outside of the illustration window instead of inside. Again, we've seen many different patterns throughout the years, and still new reverse holos are being introduced regularly. In 2011, the Black and White series introduced full art cards. Imagine that little illustration window from earlier blew up, and now is the whole card. Everything else we talked about is still there, like the illustrator name, set symbol, attacks, and energy, but the artwork is blown up. And this full art card design is what drives the hype behind the cards today. They added texture too, which is a thick coating on the face of the card with very intricate detailed lines, not unlike a fingerprint. They flow with the illustration, so two different cards have two different fingerprints. There were some awkward phases like break cards or rainbow cards, but we did eventually arrive at a place where phenomenal illustrations lead the Pokemon card franchise. This card has the expansion set logo printed onto the artwork. And for that to make sense, we have to jump back to 1999. Wizards of the Coast, the company that distributed the international Pokemon cards, had a fascination with stamping. This was actual foil that was literally stamped into the card, transforming it into a valuable collectible. This practice is long gone though. Nowadays, stamps are usually printed on the cards. However, the name stuck. The reason we're covering stamps in this video though is because they're extremely important when it comes to identifying a card and finding its value on the market. Take this Kabuto, for example. The cards are identical, but if we look up the prices, the stamped card is worth more. And the opposite can be true. The 2021 Celebration set is partially comprised of reprinted cards from the past. At first glance, these Venusaur cards look to be the same, even if you check the numbers at the bottom, which is unusual. But one is a reprint, and much less valuable than the non-stamped version. This is a deep rabbit hole, and goes far beyond the scope of this video. But I just want you to be able to identify a stamp. If you're new to the hobby, this simple mistake could result in mispricing a card and losing, in some cases, a lot of money. The set stamps are typically awarded at pre-release events these days, although they have had many different origins throughout the years. We've come a long way since the 1999 base set, but the basic card anatomy still applies, and they've done a pretty good job of keeping things familiar. If we look at a modern card, we still have energy costs on the left, attack descriptions, and attack damage on the right. Below, you'll find the weakness, resistance, and retreat costs. On EX cards and other strong cards, you'll find the rule box, but sometimes this stuff gets shuffled around. If we look at some more powerful cards like GX or V-Star, for example, they get a highlighted attack or ability. In this scenario, these are only allowed to be used once per game, so they've been dressed up and presented in a special way. Now the Pokédex information, which is redacted for the full art and EX cards, can still be found on standard card designs. This little box below the illustration window will give you information on the actual Pokémon, like its height and weight. In the bottom right, you'll find a small description of, say, the Pokémon's habitat, or maybe highlighting something unique, like a unique characteristic. These two things are trivia though, as they aren't used in the trading card game. Okay, so far, most of what we covered has been related to the trading card game, but now we get to the bottom of the card, where organization and identification is. That's what indexing means. Let's get the copyright info out of the way. This used to be at the very bottom of the card, but above the border, and consisted of the copyright years, the 3 companies that together own Pokémon, and of course Wizards, who took care of the international stuff. After Wizards left, it was shortened to the print year and just Pokémon/Nintendo. Starting in 2011, it was shortened even more to just the year and Pokémon. Then, starting with Sword and Shield, they moved it to the card's border, and once again added the 3 companies that together make up Pokémon. Okay, we got that out of the way. Things are about to get interesting, I promise. During the EX series in 2003 to 2007, they added this strange 9-digit number in the bottom left. These codes were used to interact with a Japanese mobile phone app. I guess you could enter this code and download the artwork on the card. However, this didn't take off and had no international use. It's likely that the Pokemon Company had other plans that just never panned out. So all it is today is a headache for collectors since there are numerous variants for each card. But after the EX series, moving into Diamond and Pearl, we have a new code in the bottom left. These took the format of DPBP, followed by a number. DPBP stands for Diamond and Pearl Battle Pokédex. So in case you don't know what a Pokédex is, it's a numbering system for Pokemon. For example, Pikachu is number 25 in the Pokédex, and Raichu, its evolution, is number 26. It goes in order. However, as new Pokemon are discovered, it's difficult to retroactively fit them into the Pokédex. This is where the Diamond and Pearl Battle Pokédex comes in. This is a revised Pokédex where Pichu is now number 25, Pikachu 26, and Raichu 27. Other Pokemon like Cleffa, Politoed, and Magnezone are included too. And each form of the unknown, each representing a letter of the English alphabet. This didn't last long though, spanning only 6 expansion sets. But something you will always find on every Pokemon card is a set of numbers and a symbol. Earlier we talked about set symbols being moved. Well, after that, they moved to the other bottom corner, then got replaced with an abbreviation of the set name. If you look at a modern card, it will have a small black box. This one says SSP, which stands for Surging Sparks. The first number you see is the card's unique number, and the second is the set's total number. If we want to look a card up on eBay, then you'll use the Pokemon's name, then its number, then the set number. They purposefully do not overlap these. For example, Alakazam 1 of 102 will bring up Alakazam from base set. It was later reprinted for Legendary Collection, but that version has a new number. Finally, you will see a rarity symbol, as long as the card isn't a Black Star promo. These symbols represent the card's rarity on a scale. Common is the most common, and rarities like Hyper Rare, represented by 3 gold stars, and Special Illustration Rare, represented by 2 gold stars, will be harder to find. It's complicated, so I made an entire video to break it all down. Okay, we're almost done, but there's one more mystery at the bottom of the cards. This guy is called a regulation mark. This letter lets you know if the card is legal for play in the standard format of the trading card game. If you play the game at an event or in a tournament, you'll probably be using the standard format, so the cards you're allowed to use are only from the most recent expansion sets.